All right, so who here knows this guy? Now, I'm not going to get upset with you if you don't know him. I'm not going to lie to you. I had to Google this guy's name. He seems like somewhat of an irrelevant actor in Australian politics, but it seems that Michael Gunner, right? Michael Gunner, the so-called Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, he's been feeling a little bit left out. He wants to get in on the action, and he's, of course, taking the angle of Daniel Andrews, Mark McGowan. What a big surprise, hey? What a big surprise. The second this man gets a little bit of notoriety around the country, what is he espousing? Extreme mandates, extreme coercion, threatening people's jobs, of course, subject to an experimental injection. But on top of that, he's also threatening to fine workers, working class Australians, $5,000 should they not comply with a so-called vaccination directive, or maybe it should be referred to as an injection directive or something else, or forced participation in what the Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt referred to as the world's largest clinical trial.
The world is engaged in the largest clinical trial, the largest...
And supposedly that's okay. Supposedly, according to people like Michael Gunner, Daniel Andrews, and those other grubby people like them, it's completely fine to coerce, manipulate, and threaten people to participate in this trial as per the words of the current Health Minister, Greg Hunt. How is this going on? How is it lawful? Why have these lawsuits and challenges been struck down so far in our judicial system? It raises questions and it's a little bit concerning. Now, Northern Territory, or specifically up in Darwin, they held a great protest in opposition to this lunacy. Now, I'm going to show you a clip of this so-called Chief Minister. He doesn't look like a chief to me. He looks like a political bootlicker. But anyway, I'm going to show you what he's been saying. And if you're not from Northern Territory, I think you'll understand why the people of Darwin have come out in such huge numbers. Get a load of this guy. Absolute dribble.
If your job includes interacting with members of the public, then you need to get the jab. If you work in hospitality, you need to get the jab. If you work in retail or in a supermarket, you need to get the jab. If you are behind the counter at the bank, if you're a receptionist or positions like that, you need to get the jab. If you are a barber, a hairdresser, a beauty therapist, you need to get the jab. All these workers, and many, many more, directly interact with members of the public. That means you are frontline workers in our economy. That means you must be vaccinated. Of course, there can be exemptions, but these are extremely narrow and must be backed up with medical evidence. Simply not wanting the vaccine is not a reason. Today, we are also announcing the date from which this mandate comes into effect. From Saturday, the 13th of November, if you have not received at least your first dose of a vaccine, you will not be permitted to attend your workplace in that role, and a failure to comply with the direction is a $5,000 fine.
We do not have a mandatory vaccination policy in this country. We do not have that. We are not proposing to have that. That is not changing.
So the question I have for this individual, Michael Gunner, and those like him is, should somebody have an adverse reaction, and we know that the likelihood of adverse reactions is a lot higher than what the TGA Weekly Safety Report might lead you to believe, who do they go to? Who do they go to? We know that governments across the country have made a concerted effort to eliminate the exemption pertaining to acute anxiety. That's right. Health departments have said that, well, acute anxiety, extreme anxiety, that's not a good enough reason. Okay? We have this individual here, Gunner, or Daniel Andrews, or McGowan. It doesn't matter. Their names are interchangeable because they're working for the same beast. They're demanding medical proof, right? We need medical proof, solid proof from multiple sources should you be exempt from participating in this coercive medical intervention. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd, isn't it? So here's a few notes that I made. First of all, ScoMo, of course, said we don't have a mandatory vaccination policy in Australia. So whatever happened to the policy of the nation overriding or superseding policy of individual states and territories. Where is ScoMo? Why is he so silent? You'd think as a Prime Minister, you'd have a bit of pride. You'd speak out. You'd say, hold on a second, Daniel Andrews, I'm the Prime Minister. I said we don't have a mandatory vaccination policy, so pull your head in. That's what I'd do if I was Prime Minister. If I was the Prime Minister of this country, there is no chance in hell I would allow my word to be undermined by some grubby state premier or a so-called chief minister. So what's going on? This raises some questions. Where is Scott Morrison's self-respect? Does he even have any? Or is this playing out exactly as he wanted it to? Or does he not care? Or does Australia have a problem with influence from the pharmaceutical corporations? It raises a lot of questions, doesn't it? And it all leads to making the determination that there's more at play than what meets the eye. But if you're not seeing that by now, then I can't help you, and I can't help you. You're going to have to sort something else out, okay? Anyway, what else do we have here? Jab exemptions must be backed up by medical evidence. Well, how about providing medical evidence that coercing a global population into a provisionally approved injection that is under review is somehow a good idea? Okay, how about medical evidence that overwhelmingly people will not sustain short-term and long-term injuries, or medical evidence that this injection supersedes other preventative measures or early treatment? How about that? Why won't this guy, Gunner, that's supposedly his name, allegedly, right? Will he provide us with medical evidence that this injection supersedes maintaining a strong immune system, exercise, eating well, and taking vitamins? Or do the people of Northern Territory just have to take his word for it because he is some type of authoritative figure? What an absolute disgrace. What an absolute disgrace. These politicians have no business talking about topics such as freedom, and they certainly have no business talking about topics such as medical evidence, okay? Because their rhetoric, their demands, their coercion is devoid of any facts or evidence and can be described as pseudo-scientific. I mean, how about Gunner shows us some financial evidence that the Australian government is not influenced by the pharmaceutical corporations? Who here would like to see some financial evidence to that effect? I think it's only fair and reasonable that if he's going to demand that we all go and take this provisional injection manufactured by these pharmaceutical corporations that are now profiting to the likes of which they've never seen before, prove to us there's no conflict of interest. But you won't do it. You will not do it, will you, Michael Gunner or Daniel Andrews or ScoMo or Greg Hunt? You won't do it because you think the Australian people are stupid and then we're just going to follow whatever you say. Well, you know what? There's a lot more people holding the line than what you might think. What else do we have here? Failure to comply with injection directive results in a $5,000 fine. This is just disgusting. So what are they saying here? It's not enough that you lose your job if you're ordered to take this injection and you don't do it. We're going to give you a $5,000 fine on the way out. All right, well, it's your last day today. All the best of luck for the future. And here's an invoice to the state for $5,000 for being non-compliant, right? For being a counter-revolutionary. This is absolutely disgusting, and I truly hope that the people of Darwin rise up. You know, I was thinking the other day that at least in the United States, you've actually got good governors from good states. We think about states such as Texas, Florida. You've got Governor Abbott doing good things in Texas. You've got Governor DeSantis doing good things in Florida. They're outlawing the COVID passport. They're outlawing discrimination, especially for things like employment. So in the United States, at least American citizens can travel around, escape the tyrannical Democrat states, and make a decent Republican state their home. We don't even have that option in Australia. All of our states and territories are acting in lockstep. They're all reading off the same script. This vaccine is safe and effective, and if you take it, you will not kill your grandmother. You don't want to kill your grandmother. I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting, isn't it? Just propaganda on an industrial scale. But here in Australia, we don't even have anywhere that we can move. We're stuck here. We are one big island, and it truly seems that Australia is in my view, Australia has turned into a big open air laboratory for a really sick science experiment. It's really sick. I mean, informed consent out the window. Without a doubt, these injections can be described as experimental in nature. Clinical trials ongoing for years to come. We've got no long-term data. Okay, we see in Israel now, the Prime Minister even came out and he said, hey, you know this Pfizer injection? Yeah, not exactly as effective as what we thought it was. Who here remembers Pfizer trial shows 95% efficacy? Yeah, well, go and ask the people of Israel what they think about that injection now in terms of whether or not it's effective. Go and ask them about some hospitalizations. You may have to go digging around for that type of information. It's probably not all that commonly spoke about on the Israeli mainstream media, but I think you see where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is that this isn't going to end. Explain this to your friends and family that, all right, you went and got an injection or one injection. I'm speaking to people as well that have taken the jab because this all happened so quickly. So if you took the jab to keep your job, I don't blame you because it happened so bloody quickly that so many people just had their back up against the wall. It's not going to end though. It's not going to end. So even if you took the jab, if you don't want to live like this, if you don't want to be under the boot of government and big pharma, now is the time. Now is the time. Okay, they're going to introduce the booster shots like what they've done in Israel, and the mandate for being, quote, what they refer to as fully vaccinated will be getting injected several times a year with a booster shot, and that's no way to live. That is no way to live. So even if you've taken it, do you want to spend the rest of your life being medically dictated to, coerced? Well, you haven't updated your vaccine passport, so no more job for you. No more providing for your family. No more getting a cup of coffee or going to the shops. Reject it. Say no. Ignore Daniel Andrews. Ignore that guy from Northern Territory. See, I've already forgotten his name. Because you know what? Their names are not important. They're just a blank face wearing a suit, taking orders from a machine much more powerful than them. Anyway.